By slowing down when we find ourselves in a tough moment in life, we give ourselves an incredible opportunity, to analyze, extract, and store. So to analyze the moment, to extract all the lessons and the tools within it, and then to store them someplace unforgettable.
What drew you to aviation?
I was a 6-year-old kid when I jumped on an aeroplane in Sydney. Obviously, I'm not from here. I tell everyone I'm from West Texas. I live in Tennessee. I try and convince them I'm from West Texas, but I'm actually from Australia. So when I was 6 years old, I jumped on an aeroplane in Sydney and we were headed to an island in the Pacific called Vanuatu. And I was with my mum, my dad, and my two brothers, and we're just a normal Aussie family. Dad was the milkman, mum was a stay-at-home mum. And we jumped on this aeroplane, we took off. And as a 6-year-old kid, it was like everything about that day was just magic. And I fell in love with aviation. I fell in love with the sights, the sounds, and being kicked back on in the seat on takeoff and flying through the clouds. And this was actually showing my age just prior to September 11th. So we're actually invited to jump out of our seats, my two brothers and I, and walk up to the cockpit and meet the pilots. So that was really the icing on the cake. From that day on, I would just tell everyone I was going to grow up and become a jumbo jet pilot. So that was the beginning.
Following your plane crash, how did you find the strength to persevere?
I think after an accident like that, the question always pops up: how did you get back into the air, and why would you want to put yourself back in the cockpit and potentially relive all of that again? And I think for me, it was all about passion. 6-year-old kid, I discovered a passion, and not a lot of people discover it, let alone at that age. And I think the passion is what gives us purpose and place in the world, and everything that had happened in my life prior to that accident, becoming the youngest person to fly solo around the world and writing a book that was literally called Born to Fly. It was in me. It was part of who I was as a human. So even though we'd been in a situation that was honestly just a living nightmare, I wanted, before I even left that hospital, before I even got back to my feet, I wanted to be back in the cockpit. I actually left hospital with my armband still on, too stubborn to let my parents drive me. I left the hospital in my wheelchair with my crutches between my legs and my bag on my knees, and I took a cab to the local train station. First time I'd ever been let out of hospital on weekend leave, and I caught a train up to an airport to the company that I was working for when I had the accident. They put me into an airplane, lifted me out of the wheelchair, put me into the airplane, and they flew me back down to an airport. First time back in the air. And we landed at the airport that I had started and completed the round the world flight from. So I was so driven to get back into the cockpit, and I can really only say that was just purely because of the passion I had for aviation and the want to get back on the horse, as you could say. And I'm so glad I did, because it's been a good ride since then.
What is the theory behind your speaking topic? What's your pink Cadillac?
I often tell people I wish that I never flew around the world and I never had to learn to walk again. I wish I just moved to America, bought a pink Cadillac, and then went on the speaking circuit, because it's been a massive hit. But the backstory is I'm here in the US as a speaker. My story revolves heavily and almost solely around aviation, the highs and the lows of that. But I took a day trip to Memphis, and a few hours west of here in Nashville. And I went to Memphis and I visited Graceland, the home of Elvis Presley. Massive Elvis fan, right? Coolest guy in the world. And I toured Graceland, his mansion. And like all good US attractions, the only way that you can get out of that facility is to go through the gift shop. So that's exactly what I did. I went through the gift shop and I actually bought this. You can see that model pink car up on the shelf. I'd always wanted a pink Cadillac as a young kid. I thought they were amazing. They were big, they were huge, they had wings, and they were pink. So they always kind of like blew me away. So I always wanted a pink Cadillac, but I thought I would get one when I was old with gray hair, like all the guys who go to the car shows. I didn't think I'd ever get one when I was young, but I bought this model car and I thought, you know what? I'll sit this on my shelf until I get the real thing. And I'll never forget taking it back to my housemate in Nashville. I brought home this toy pink car and sat it by our TV, and he thought I was an absolute idiot. He was so confused. But 6 months later, scrolling Facebook like we all do, I saw something for sale and I just had to have it. So I went down to a place called Jackson, Georgia, and I purchased a real 2.5-ton pink Cadillac, and we named her Flo. Easily the worst financial decision I've ever made in my life, right? And just to like solidify that, it overheated 7 times on the way back to Nashville. 7 times it overheated. So anyway, so here I am. I'm an Australian. I live in Nashville, the bachelorette party capital of America. And I own a pink car. And we started to drive this car. And it was absolutely awkward, right? People would honk their horn. They would wave. They would stop you at a gas station. They'd want to sit in the car. They'd want to sit on the car. They'd want to go for a ride. They'd want to tell you about their great uncle Chuck who owned a Cadillac in the 60s. Like, it was wild. But what I noticed as a resilience keynote speaker, a speaker focusing solely on how do we build and strengthen a foundation of resilience? How do we forget the tough times that happen to us, the turbulence that we all have to go through as a byproduct of breathing? How do we kind of forget that? How do we overcome it? How do we use it to become bigger and better and stronger in the future? Here I was as a resilience keynote speaker, watching grown adults with all their own troubles in the world look at this pink car and smile like a kid, just ear to ear. And even though I bought this pink car for me, I was starting to see the connection between the car and what I did for a living. So we started to ask this question just at the end of every keynote. What's your pink Cadillac? What's the one thing you do for you that doesn't make a whole lot of sense? It's not financially responsible, but you do it solely because it makes you smile like a kid, right? What's that one thing you do that makes you smile like a kid? Now, it could be a physical thing. It could be an old car. It could be a motorbike. It could be a new fishing rod. It could be a jewelry collection or so on. But it doesn't have to be expensive. It could also be a ritual or a routine. Now, I know you don't have too many beautiful beaches in the UK, but it could be a walk on the beach on a Saturday afternoon. It could be a Sunday evening glass of wine. It could be skydiving or singing lessons. It doesn't matter. We've heard them all, trust me. As long as it makes you smile like a kid. And why we ask this question is, in order to be resilient and to show up in life, not just in your personal life, but also in your professional life, to be the very best version of yourself, you have to know when to step back. And that's to step back from the desk, give yourself a little bit of time for self-care and self-love, work-life balance, as we could call it, because that's what will allow you to show up better in all areas of your life. So we asked this question, what's your pink Cadillac now? The responses we have received are wild. We're starting to see groups and audiences and teams and organizations start to have these conversations with each other that they've never had before. One lady put her hand up and said, my pink Cadillac is collecting houseplants. She had 35 houseplants, this lady. And I said to her, I was like, Christmas this year, every one of your colleagues, you're going to have 70 houseplants because you're about to get a lot of houseplants for Christmas. We had another gentleman put his hand up and he said, it was actually in a Slack channel. So in their intercompany chat, he said, my dream pink Cadillac is to own a pet goat. Somebody else within his organization put their hand up and said, I also want a pet goat. So now we have an Australian living in Nashville in Tennessee using a pink car to bring 2 colleagues together over their mutual admiration of pet goats, right? So this is the power of the pink Cadillac. We're starting conversations that have never been had before in organizations, and we're encouraging people to step back, take a bit of time for themselves, do something that makes them smile like a kid. And we promise that will allow them to show up bigger and better and be more resilient, more happy, more content in all areas of their life.
In business, change is inevitable. How can corporate teams improve their change management skills?
We really focus on this concept of becoming turbulence tough. So what does it take to use today's turbulence in order to tackle tomorrow's storms with a little more ease? So basically, we're not learning from the struggles of today. How can we become more resilient, bigger and better and more confident in our ability to tackle what's coming tomorrow? And over the last few years, it's been quite obvious that we're just not ever sure of what's around the corner. We can never really truly know. And so we talk about becoming turbulence tough. How do we do that? We encourage everyone to slow down when they enter turbulence. So with the pink Cadillac, we encourage people to step back, take a bit more time for themselves. But with turbulence tough, we encourage people to slow down. So when we enter turbulence, the first thing we need to do is slow down. Now, as a pilot, when we enter turbulence, the very first thing we do is grab the throttles and we pull them back and we slow the airplane down. And the reason that we do that is because we have to slow down below what's called maneuvering speed. Now, every airplane has its own maneuvering speed. If we fly in turbulence over that speed, the forces that act on that airframe are really, really extreme. It can cause damage, or it can even cause in-flight breakup. So by slowing that airplane down below maneuvering speed, we're reducing the forces acting on that airframe. It also gives the pilot more time to think about a plan B. How are we going to navigate around and through this turbulence? As humans, as an individual or a team or an organization, we actually have to do exactly the same thing, right? When we enter turbulence, we naturally just want to push the throttles forward. We want to speed up. We want to get out of turbulence. We want to be back in smooth air. No one likes adversity, right? But it is a byproduct of breathing, right? It's part of our life. It's guaranteed. We also need to pull the throttles back. By slowing down when we find ourselves in a tough moment in life, we give ourselves an incredible opportunity, an opportunity to analyze, extract, and store. So to analyze the moment, to extract all the lessons and the tools within it, and then to store them someplace unforgettable. I like to call my place the mindset toolbox, which we touch on, but I like to call my place the mindset toolbox, which we touch on. But the real kind of meat in this is slowing down allows us the opportunity to analyze, extract, and store. One of the greatest opportunities I was ever given in my life was to experience an incredible high, becoming the youngest person, first teenager in history to fly solo around the world, and being able to publish a book with plenty of spelling mistakes, but publish a book, to be named one of Australia's 50 greatest explorers as a kid who still doesn't make his bed in the morning. I'm sorry, but to experience all those good things, to meet the royals, you guys have shake hands with Prince William and Prince Harry and to have a conversation about aviation and adventure. And I'm still waiting on an invite from Prince William to fly around the world in a helicopter, because we did talk about that, and I was hoping he'd go to his grandma and ask for a helicopter, but it hasn't happened. So maybe you could reach out. You're a little bit closer to home. But to have all these extremely amazing opportunities happen in life, and then in a split second to be the only survivor of a plane wreck, cut from the wreckage, taken to hospital, diagnosed a paraplegic, that was tough, right? So lots of people experience highs, lots of people experience lows. I experienced both by the age of 21. And the opportunity was to compare the two and to ask myself a couple of really important questions. Where do we truly learn? And what makes us the very best version of ourselves? And what I discovered is that it is the lows, right? It's not meeting the royals or achieving great things. It's the lows, it's the adversity, it's the turbulence that provide us the opportunity to become the very best version of ourselves. To do that, we have to remind ourselves, don't flee from adversity, see it as the opportunity that it is. Slow down, analyze, extract, and store before you move on, because that's how we build and strengthen our foundation and resilience or become turbulence tough.